backstop would come into force, an arrangement with which there is no time limit or endpoint. It locks Britain into a deal from which it cannot leave without the agreement of the EU. And as my friend, the member for Holborn and St Pancras, has pointed out on so many occasions, this is unprecedented in British history. The last 2 years gives us no confidence that this government can do a deal in under 2 years. So at some point before December 2020, the focus would then inevitably shift from negotiations on the future relationship to negotiations on an extension to the transition period, including negotiations on what further payments we should make to the European Union. The vague partnership document says, and I quote, "It can lead to a spectrum of different outcomes as well as checks and controls." That doesn't show to me any clarity whatsoever in that document. And there is not even any mention of the famed frictionless trade that was promised in the Chequers proposals. The former Brexit secretary, that's one of the former Brexit secretaries, promised a detailed, precise and substantive document. The government spectacularly failed to deliver it. So, Mr. Speaker, I can confirm this, that Labour will vote against this deal tonight. And, Mr. Speaker, Labour will vote against it because it's a bad deal for this country. And as we have heard over the past week, members in all parties, including many in the Conservative Party, will join us in rejecting this botched and damaging deal. And I welcome the fact there is a clear majority to reject any no-deal outcome. The amendment to the Finance Bill last week demonstrated the will of the House on rejecting the danger, and it is a danger, of a no-deal outcome that would cause such chaos to so many people across this country. But, Mr. Speaker, it's not enough for the House to vote against the deal before us and against no deal. We also have to be for something. So, Mr. Speaker, in the coming days, it is vital that this House has the opportunity to debate and vote on the way forward, to consider all the options available. The overwhelming majority of the House voted to respect the result of the referendum and therefore voted to trigger Article 50. So I say this to our negotiating partners in the European Union. If Parliament votes down this deal, then reopening negotiations should not and cannot be ruled out. We understand why, after 2 frustrating years of negotiations, this I'm saying to the European Union, you would want this resolved. But this Parliament, our Parliament here, has only one duty: to represent the interests of the people of this country. And the deal negotiated by the government does not meet the needs of the people of this country. The people of Britain, including many European Union nationals who have made their lives here, these are people who have contributed to our country, have contributed to our economy and to our public services, including our National Health Service. And those people are now anxious and have no faith in this government to manage the process of settled status fairly or efficiently. And the early pilots of the scheme are very far from encouraging. The Prime Minister claimed that this is a good deal. And so confident was she of that, that she refused to publish the government's legal advice. But her government's own economic assessment clearly tells us it is a bad deal. It's a product, Mr. Speaker, of 2 years of botched negotiations, in which the government spent more time arguing with itself and in its own cabinet than it did in negotiating with the European Union. It's not only on Brexit that they have failed. Under this government, Mr. Speaker, more people are living in poverty, including... Mr. Speaker, I'm talking of the poverty of 500,000 more children who've been moved into poverty while this government's been in office. I'm also talking of those that have been forced into rough sleeping and homelessness, which has risen every year. Too many people are stuck in low-paid and insecure work. Too many people are struggling to make ends meet and falling deeper and deeper into personal debt on credit cards and loan sharks. Nothing in this Brexit deal and nothing on offer from this government will solve that. That is why Labour believes that a general election would be the best outcome for the country. If this deal is rejected tonight, we need, Mr. Speaker, to keep in mind that the vast majority of the people of this country don't think of themselves as Remainers or Leavers. Whether they voted Leave or Remain 2.5 years ago, they, all of them, are concerned about their future, and it's their concerns this House must be able to answer and meet. So, Mr. Speaker, I hope that tonight this House votes down this deal, and then we move to a general election. So the people, Mr. Speaker, so the people...
Order. Nobody's going to shout the right honourable gentleman down, just as nobody will shout the Prime Minister down. All they're doing, by causing me to intervene, is taking time away. Not necessary, rather foolish, thoroughly counterproductive. Jeremy Corbyn.
So, Mr. Speaker, the people need to be able to take back control, and a general election would give them the opportunity to decide who their MPs were, who their government was, and who was negotiating on their behalf. And it would give that new government a mandate, and the mandate that is needed to break the deadlock that has been brought to this House by this government. But first, Mr. Speaker, I ask this of the House. Vote against this deal. Vote against this deal because we've had a very long and very detailed debate in this House. More members have spoken in this debate than almost any other debate I can remember. They've given a heartfelt analysis of this deal, and a very large number have said why they will vote against this deal. Quite simply, Mr. Speaker, this deal is bad for our economy, a bad deal for our democracy, and a bad deal for this country. I ask the House tonight to do the right thing. Reject this deal. Reject this deal because of the harm it would do, and show that we as MPs are speaking up for the people that we represent, who recognise this deal is dangerous for this country and bad for them, their living standards, and for our collective future.
Mr. Speaker, this debate has lasted some 8 days, over 54 hours, with speeches of powerful sincerity, from over 200 honourable and right honourable members. It has been historic for our Parliament and for our country. We have heard contributions from every perspective, looking at all aspects of this complex and vital question. We've seen this House at its most passionate and vigorous, and I thank everyone who has contributed. No one watching this debate can be in any doubt about the strength of this House of Commons as the fulcrum of our democracy. This is a debate about our economy and security, the livelihoods of our constituents, and the future for our children and for generations to come. It goes to the heart of our Constitution, and no one should forget that it is a democratic process that has got us to where we are today. In 2015, my party stood on an election manifesto that had as a centrepiece the promise of an in-out referendum on the UK's membership of the European Union. The British people responded by electing a Conservative government to follow through on that promise. That is what we did when this House voted overwhelmingly to hold the referendum and put the choice in the hands of the British people. Indeed, 470 current members voted in favour of it, and only 32 opposed it. That campaign was keenly fought. It caught the public imagination like few campaigns before it. Turnout was 72%, higher than for any national poll for a quarter of a century. And while not overwhelming, the result was clear and it was decisive. Something this House accepted when we voted overwhelmingly to trigger Article 50. 436 current members voted to do so, only 85 opposed. Parliament gave the people a choice. We set the clock ticking on our departure. And tonight, we will determine whether we move forward with a withdrawal agreement that honours the vote and sets us on course for a better future. The responsibility of each and every one of us at this moment is profound, for this is an historic decision that will set the future of our country for generations. So what are the alternatives that present themselves? First, we could decide it's all too difficult and give up, either by revoking Article 50 or passing the back buck to the British people in a second referendum. But I believe we have a duty to deliver on the democratic decision of the British people, and to do so in a way that brings our country together. A second referendum would lead instead to further division. There'd be no agreement to the question, let alone the answer. It would say to the people we were elected to serve that we were unwilling to do what they had instructed. Now, the second possible outcome is that we leave on the 29th of March without a deal. But I don't believe that's what the British people voted for, because they were told that if they voted to leave, they could still expect a good trading relationship with the European Union. And neither would it be the best outcome. Our deal delivers certainty for businesses, with a time-limited implementation period to prepare for the new arrangements of the future relationship. No deal means no implementation period. Our deal protects the rights of EU citizens living in the UK and UK citizens living in the EU, so they can carry on their lives as before. No deal means no reciprocal agreement to protect those citizens' rights. Our deal delivers the deepest security partnership in the EU's history, so our police and security services can continue to work together with their European partners to keep all our people safe. No deal means no such security partnership. And our deal delivers the foundations for an unprecedented economic relationship with the EU that is more ambitious, that is...
I said earlier it was becoming really rather a noisy and unseemly atmosphere, and that has now resumed. It must stop. The Prime Minister must be heard. The Prime Minister.
Our deal delivers the foundations for an unprecedented economic relationship with the EU that is more ambitious than anything they have ever entered into with a third country. It will give us the benefits of trading with the European Union and the ability to forge new trade deals in our own right. No deal means those new trade deals come at the expense of a trade deal with Europe, not in addition to it. So while it is categorically wrong to suggest that our country could not ultimately make a success of no deal, it is equally wrong to suggest that this is the best outcome. Now, third, there is the path advocated by the Leader of the Opposition, and we've heard it again, of calling a general election. But today's vote is not about what's best for the Leader of the Opposition. It is about what is best for the country. And at the end of a general election, whatever the result, the choices facing us will not have changed. It will still be no Brexit, leaving with no deal, or leaving with a deal. And there's no guarantee that an election would make the parliamentary arithmetic any easier. All it would gain is 2 more months of uncertainty and division. In 2017, the two main parties both stood on manifestos that pledged to deliver the result of the referendum. They got over 80% of the vote. People had the opportunity to vote for a second referendum by supporting the Liberal Democrats in 2017. Just 7% of voters did so. It is the job of Parliament to deliver on the promises made at the last election, not to be seeking a new one. Now, some suggest there's a fourth option, to agree that we should leave with a deal on the 29th of March, but to vote this deal down in the hope of going back to Brussels again and negotiating an alternative deal. But no such alternative deal exists. The political declaration sets the framework for the future relationship, and the next phase of negotiations will be our chance to shape that relationship. But we cannot begin those talks unless or until we agree the terms of our withdrawal. And the European Union will not agree to any other deal for that withdrawal. So, having ruled out all of these options, we're left with one: to vote for this deal tonight. One that delivers on the core tenets of Brexit, taking back control of our borders, laws, money, trade and fisheries, but in a way that protects jobs, ensures our security and honours the integrity of our United Kingdom. One that strikes a fair balance between the hopes and desires of all our fellow citizens, those who voted to leave and those who voted to stay in. And if we leave with the deal I'm proposing, I believe we can lay the foundations from which to build a better Britain. And as Prime Minister, I would not stand at this dispatch box and recommend a course of action that I do not believe is in the best interests of our country and our future. And there are differences in this House today, but I believe we can come together as we go forwards. And let me reassure anyone who's in any doubt whatsoever, the government will work harder at taking Parliament with us. And as we move on to the next phase of negotiations, we will be looking to work with Parliament to seek that consensus. But, Mr. Speaker, let me turn to the most contentious element of our deal, the Northern Ireland Protocol.
My right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, knows that what concerns many of us is the possibility of the permanent nature of the Northern Ireland backstop. May I refer her to my Amendment B on the order paper, which sets a deadline for that backstop, and may I ask her what is the attitude of the government to my amendment?
Can I thank my right honourable friend for the question he's asked and for the work that he has been doing to try to find a way through on this particular issue. And I know he's spent a long time consulting with international lawyers on this issue. The government isn't able to accept the amendment that has been selected, that my right honourable friend has put down, that has been selected tonight, because we have a different opinion and a different interpretation of the Vienna Convention. But I note that my right honourable friend has put down an alternative proposals in relation to this issue. The government is willing to look at creative solutions and will be happy to carry on working with my right honourable friend in relation to that particular issue. I said I would turn. I said I would turn to the Northern Ireland.
Order. The House must calm itself. Zen, restraint, patience. Hear the Prime Minister.
I set out the government's position in detail on my statement yesterday, so I'm not going to go over it again. But the key thing to remember is this isn't a commitment we're making to the European Union. It's a commitment to the people of Northern Ireland and Ireland that they will be able to carry on living their lives as they do today. It's about saying that whatever happens when we leave the EU, we will honour the Belfast Agreement. Its success has been built on allowing people from both communities in Northern Ireland to feel that their identities are respected under the principle of consent. For many people in Northern Ireland, that means having a seamless land border between the UK and Ireland, which is also essential for their economy. For others, that means fully respecting the fact that Northern Ireland is an intrinsic part of the United Kingdom. No one wants to see the return of a hard border, and as a proud unionist, I share the concerns of members who are determined that we do not undermine the strength of our United Kingdom. But it is not enough simply to make these assertions. We have to put in place arrangements that deliver those ends. And it's not just as simple as some would like it to be. So, as Prime Minister for the whole UK, it's my duty to provide a solution that works for the people of Northern Ireland. The answer lies in agreeing our future economic relationship, but we need an insurance policy to guarantee there will be no hard border if that future relationship is not in place by the end of the implementation period. I'll give way to the Leader of the Democratic Unionist Party.
Very grateful to the Prime Minister for giving way. And would she agree that whatever one's view on this withdrawal agreement and whatever arguments the people deploy, that we should not be using the peace or the political process in Northern Ireland as arguments for voting for this deal or voting against it? Would she agree that that is completely and utterly out of order? Make that clear to all of our Cabinet colleagues as well.
To the right honourable gentleman, I think everybody across this House is committed to ensuring that we maintain the arrangements of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, that we also ensure that we maintain the many benefits that have come from the peace process in Northern Ireland. And that should not be disrupted, and that should not be affected in any sense. But I also say that whatever future relationship is going to be negotiated or people want to see being negotiated, that insurance policy is essential. Any of the other proposals, Canada, Norway, any number of variations of those models, all of them require the insurance policy, and that is the so-called backstop. And no backstop simply means no deal now and for the foreseeable future. And I don't want to see anybody being able to exploit no deal and bringing doubt about the future of our union as a result of that. And let's remember, if I may say to this House, what the withdrawal agreement does deliver for the people of Northern Ireland. An implementation period, certainty for businesses. Protection of citizens' rights, certainty to thousands of families. No hard border, unfettered access to British and EU markets. Protection of the single electricity market across the island of Ireland, securing energy supply in Northern Ireland. Continued security cooperation with our European allies that the police service of Northern Ireland say is essential, and above all, the protection of the historic Belfast Good Friday Agreement. The deal we have puts our union first. Now, let me turn to the contribution of the Leader of the Opposition. Characteristic his whole approach to Brexit, long on criticism and short on coherence. He's claimed that he'll be able to renegotiate the deal in a matter of weeks, get a drastically different outcome, and despite the European Union making clear that's impossible. But everything he does is designed to avoid taking any difficult decisions, saying one thing to one group and another thing to another. In the general election, he said in his manifesto, freedom of movement will end. On Sunday, he said, I'm not against the free movement of people. When asked about Brexit in a German newspaper, he said, we can't stop it. The referendum took place. Article 50 has been triggered. In his speech at Wakefield last week, and again this evening, he said a second referendum was an option on the table. He says Labour would run an independent trade policy, but he wants to join the customs union. He says he's opposed to no deal, but he says he's opposed to withdrawal agreement and the backstop without which there is no deal. So the question is, what is his position? Because he has failed in his responsibility to provide a credible alternative to the government of the day by pursuing from the start a cynical course designed to serve his own political interest and not the national interest. He has forfeited the right to demand loyalty from those of his MPs who take a more pragmatic view, because he doesn't care whether we leave or not, with a deal or not, as long as he can maximise disruption and uncertainty and the likelihood of a general election. And I hope that members opposite, who faithfully pledged to their constituents that they would respect the result of the referendum, that they think carefully before voting against a deal which delivers Brexit. And I hope that those who fear leaving without a deal, whose constituents rely on manufacturing jobs, think very carefully about rejecting a deal that is the only guaranteed way to take no deal off the table. Mr. Speaker, this is the most significant vote that any of us will ever be part of in our political careers. After all the debate, all the disagreement, all the division, the time has now come for all of us in this House to make a decision that will define our country for decades to come, a decision that will determine the future for our constituents, their children and their grandchildren, a decision that each of us will have to justify and live with for many years to come. We know the consequences of voting for this deal. They are laid out in black and white in the pages of the withdrawal agreement. But no one who votes against this deal will be able to tell their constituents what real-world outcome they voted for, because a vote against this deal is a vote for nothing more than uncertainty, division, and the very real risk of no deal.
I'm very grateful for the Prime Minister for giving way. Prime Minister, on any of the analysis of Brexit, economic growth will be lower than staying in the European Union. Will the Prime Minister not realise, on the basis of the knowledge and on the fact that people are going to lose opportunities as a consequence of Brexit, the alternative is to extend Article 50, go back, give the people the say. Let's act in all our interests on the basis of the information that we now have.
I say to the right honourable gentleman, Parliament gave the British people a choice. Parliament, the government of the time, all parties, all those campaigning in that referendum were absolutely clear that whatever the decision of that referendum, it would be respected by government and by Parliament. And I believe that we have a duty to deliver on that referendum vote, and to do so in a way that does protect people's jobs and protects our security and protects our union. A vote against this deal is a vote for nothing more than uncertainty, division, and the very real risk of no deal or no Brexit at all. And it doesn't have to be that way. Tonight we can choose certainty over uncertainty. We can choose unity over division. We can choose to deliver on our promise to the British people, not break that promise and endanger trust in politics for a generation. Because as members of Parliament, we have a duty to serve not our own self-interest nor that of our parties, but the people we were elected to represent. It is the people of this country that we were sent here to serve. The people of this country who queued up at polling stations, who cast their ballots so they might put their faith in us. It is the people of this country who entrusted us with the sacred right to build for them and their children and grandchildren the brighter future they expect and deserve. And if we act in the national interest and back this deal tonight, then tomorrow we can begin to build that future together. If we act in the national interest and back this deal tonight, we can build a country that works for everyone. Together we can show the people we serve that their voices have been heard, that their trust was not misplaced, that our politics can and does deliver, that politicians can rise above our differences and come together to do what the people asked of us. That is the test history has set for us today. It will determine the future of our country for generations. We each have a solemn responsibility to deliver Brexit and take this country forward. And with my whole heart, I call on this House to discharge that responsibility together, and I commend this motion to the House.
Under the order of the House of the 4th of December and the 9th of January, I must now put the questions necessary to dispose of proceedings on the European Union withdrawal motion. As I explained the sequence earlier, it should now be familiar to colleagues. I begin by inviting Jeremy Corbyn, the Leader of the Opposition, to move Amendment A.
Mr. Speaker.
Not moved. I turn now to the second of the amendments, that in the name of the Leader of the Scottish National Party, Mr. Ian Blackford, Amendment K.
Not moved, Mr. Speaker.
Moved. Thank you. I turn to the Right Honourable Gentleman, the member for Gainsborough, to move, if he so wishes, Amendment B.
In view of the positive response from the PM, not moved.
Moved. Very well. And finally, I invite Mr. John Barron to move Amendment F.
I beg to move. Mr. Speaker.
The question is that the amendment in the name of the honourable gentleman and of others, Amendment F, be made. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the noes have it. No? Is the honourable gentleman persisting? No? Persistence in order. I know what I'm doing. The key point is persistence. If the honourable order. If the honourable gentleman wishes to press his amendment, he is entitled to do so. Oh, yes, he is. Oh, yes, he is. I'll be the judge of that. The question is that the amendment be made. I'll say it once more. As many as other opinions say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. Order. The question is that Amendment F, as in F for Freddie, be made. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. No. Tellers for the ayes, Sir Mike Penning and Nigel Evans. Tellers for the noes, Wendy Morton and Ian Stewart. Apóyanos! Order.
The ayes to the right were 24. The noes to the left were 600.
The ayes to the right, 24. The noes to the left, 600. So the noes have it. The noes have it. Unlock. Thank you. One more heave. Order. I now put the main question to the House. The main question in the name of the Prime Minister. The question is the main motion in the name of the Prime Minister. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye! Aye! Of the contrary, no. No! Division! Clear the lobby! Order. The question is the main motion in the name of the Prime Minister. As many as have that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. No. Tellers for the ayes, Wendy Morton and Ian Stewart. Tellers for the noes, Vicky Foxcroft and Nick Smith. Lock the doors! Order! Order!
The ayes to the right, 202. The noes to the left, 432.
The ayes to the right, 202. The noes, order! The ayes to the right, 202. The noes to the left, 432. So the noes have it. The noes have it. Unlock. On a point of order. The Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the House has spoken and the government will listen. It is clear that the House does not support this deal, but tonight's vote tells us nothing about what it does support. Nothing about how or even if it intends to honour the decision the British people took in a referendum Parliament decided to hold. And people, particularly EU citizens who've made their home here, and UK citizens living in the EU, deserve clarity on these questions as soon as possible.
Order! Order! There's no good people shouting. There will be an opportunity for other points of order, but the Prime Minister must and will be heard. The Prime Minister.
Those whose jobs rely on our trade with the EU need that clarity. So, with your permission, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to set out briefly how the government intends to proceed. First, we need to confirm whether this government still enjoys the confidence of the House. I believe that it does, but given the scale and importance of tonight's vote, it's right that others have the chance to test that question if they wish to do so. I can therefore confirm that if the official opposition table a confidence motion this evening, in the form required by the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, the government will make time to debate that motion tomorrow. And if, as happened before Christmas, the official opposition declined to do so, we will, on this occasion, consider making time tomorrow to debate any motion in the form required from the other opposition parties, should they put one forward. Second, if the House confirms its confidence in this government, I will then hold meetings with my colleagues, our confidence and supply partner, the DUP, and senior parliamentarians from across the House to identify what would be required to secure the backing of the House. The government will approach these meetings in a constructive spirit, but given the urgent need to make progress, we must focus on ideas that are genuinely negotiable and have sufficient support in this House. Third, if these meetings yield such ideas, the government will then explore them with the European Union. Mr. Speaker, I want to end by offering two reassurances. The first is to those who fear that the government's strategy is to run down the clock to the 29th of March. That is not our strategy. I've always believed that the best way forward is to leave in an orderly way with a good deal, and have devoted much of the last 2 years negotiating such a deal. As you confirmed, Mr. Speaker, the amendment to the business motion tabled last week by my right honourable and learned friend, the member for Beaconsfield, is not legally binding, but the government respects the will of the House. We will therefore make a statement about the way forward and table an amendable motion by Monday. The second reassurance is to the British people who voted to leave the European Union in the referendum 2.5 years ago. I became Prime Minister immediately after that referendum. I believe it's my duty to deliver on their instruction, and I intend to do so. Every day that passes without this issue being resolved means more uncertainty, more bitterness and more rancour. The government has heard what the House has said tonight, but I ask members on all sides of the House to listen to the British people who want this issue settled, and to work with the government to do just that.
I will come to other colleagues, but first of all, point of order, the Leader of the Opposition, Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The result of tonight's vote is the greatest defeat for a government since the 1920s in this House. This is a catastrophic defeat for this government. After 2 years of failed negotiations, the House of Commons has delivered its verdict on her Brexit deal, and that verdict is absolutely decisive. I hear the words of the Prime Minister, but actions of her government of the past 2 years speak equally clearly. She is only attempting to reach out now to try to keep her failed process and deal alive after it's been so roundly rejected by Parliament on behalf of the people of this country. Labour has laid out our priorities consistently. No deal must be taken off the table. A permanent customs union must be secured and people's rights and protections must be guaranteed so they do not fall behind. At every turn, the Prime Minister has closed the door on dialogue. Businesses begged her to negotiate a comprehensive customs union. Trade union leaders pressed her for the same thing. They were ignored. In the last 2 years, she's only had one priority: the Conservative Party. Her governing principle of delay and denial has reached the end of the line. She cannot seriously believe that after 2 years of failure, she is capable of negotiating a good deal for the people of this country. The most important issue facing us is that the government has lost the confidence of this House and this country. I therefore, Mr. Speaker, inform you I have now tabled a motion of no confidence in this government. And I'm pleased that motion will be debated tomorrow, so this House can give its verdict on the sheer incompetence of this government and pass that motion of no confidence in the government.
First of all, just come to the leader. I will come to the right honourable gentleman, of course, but a point of order, the Leader of the House.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I should like to make a short business statement regarding the business for tomorrow and the remainder of this week.
I'm extraordinarily grateful to the right honourable lady, and I accept that she can't be psychic as to what I'm thinking and I can't be psychic as to what she's thinking. I think the smooth and orderly way to proceed with this matter is to deal with points of order first and then to come to the right honourable lady's statement, which would be entirely proper and doubtless helpful to the House. Point of order, Mr. Ian Blackford.
Mr. Speaker, we should be aware of the situation that we're in. The clock is ticking. We have got very little time to resolve this. The fact that it has taken us so long to get to this point, frankly, is shameful. This is a humiliating defeat for the government. When I listen to the Prime Minister, it sounds like everybody else is at fault rather than her. She has to accept responsibility for what has happened this evening. Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted that the Leader of the Opposition has come round to a motion of no confidence. This should have happened before, but of course we will support it. Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned, it is clear the clock is ticking. The government needs to secure the safety of all our nations and should immediately postpone the Article 50 process and should immediately have talks with all the leaders of the opposition parties. Let's work together in all our interests. But let's listen to the voices of the parliamentarians that have been sent here. There is no support for this deal. It mustn't come back again. The obvious thing to do, the right thing to do, suspend Article 50, put this to the people in a people's vote.
I know the right honourable gentleman won't take offence when I say he was using the device of a point of order, as is entirely understandable in these circumstances, to say what he wanted to say, but he was more interested in what he had to say to the House than in anything that I might have to say to him. It's not a matter for the Chair. The right honourable gentleman has registered his view, and these are the sorts of issues that can quite properly be aired in debate and quite conceivably in discussions that take place with the Prime Minister and other party leaders. But he's made his point with force and alacrity, and it's on the record for colleagues to study. I will take the honourable lady first, right honourable lady first, and then others. Point of order, Jo Swinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With this result of a scale that is unprecedented in recent times, it is clear that this deal, nor any tweaks to it, will get through the House of Commons. So can I ask for your guidance, Mr. Speaker, on how Parliament can assert its authority to make sure that we can give the people of this country a say on this deal to resolve this matter? It is a mess that needs to be resolved by the people in a people's vote.
Well, my response to the honourable lady is as follows. First of all, there may well well be an opportunity for her to air her own thoughts on that matter, the situation we face and the suggested way forward in the course of debate to which the Prime Minister, in her point of order, referred. There is that prospect potentially unfolding. So that's one opportunity for the Honourable Lady. And the second would be those discussions to take place in coming days. And I dare say that the Honourable Lady will want to take the chance to participate in those. More widely, where there is discussion about Parliament's role and what Parliament might do and what options Parliament might have, I think I can predict with complete confidence that the Honourable Lady will have a view about that, and that view, which is important, will be heard. And point of order, Mr. Angus Brendan McNeill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister spoke about the will of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, and I think we have to investigate that further. When can we test the will of this House on the choices that are now left? The choices are no deal versus revoking Article 50. Can we test these in the House? And bearing in mind, of course, that in Scotland the European Union is more popular in the polls than the United Kingdom, and the Prime Minister should know that.
There'll be plenty of opportunity for testing in the days ahead. I think well, can I just take the Honourable Lady first? Point of order, Dr. Philippa Whitford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This isn't a political point of order. Yesterday it was raised the issue of the member for Hampstead and Kilburn and the fact that she should have been undergoing a caesarean section today for a high-risk pregnancy, and she is comfortable with me saying she has gestational diabetes and was asked by her medical team to undergo that at an early possibility. She has had to defer that despite the advice and comments that you made from the chair yesterday that apparently were given no comfort from the government benches. And I think this is shocking. And I have to say that as a doctor, to put our colleague at risk and her baby at risk because we cannot have a method of allowing those who are sick or pregnant is disgraceful.
Well, I note what the Honourable Lady says, and I don't cavil at it at all. I made the point yesterday. I thought the situation was lamentable. I used that word, I think, several times. The situation was lamentable. This matter, I'm not interested in people chuntering for a sedentary position to no obvious benefit or purpose. I'm ruling on the matter and I require no assistance in the process of doing so. The situation was lamentable. I thought it better that the Honourable Lady should have the opportunity of a proxy vote. That was my view, and it was a view widely shared. The matter was debated in February of last year and in September. I had indicated my strong support. It would have been necessary for a resolution to be tabled by the Leader of the House for reasons which others can explain. It's not my job to do their explaining for them. That has not happened. I think it's regrettable, but it cannot be sorted tonight. Nevertheless, she's registered her concern. It's a concern and a sense, frankly, of very deep disappointment, to put it mildly, that I share, and it will doubtless be dealt with in days or weeks to come. And my very great sympathies go to the Honourable Lady, the member for Hampstead and Kilburn, who, in my judgment, should not have been put in this position. Point of order, Yvette Cooper.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has now said that she will listen to voices from right across this House. She has obviously had 30 months in which to do that, and it has led to this defeat for the government tonight, which is the greatest for more than 100 years. We must all hope that she will indeed listen to voices from across the House, but we also will recognise that it will take time, and people and businesses and government organisations and institutions will now be worried that there are only just over 70 days left. The Prime Minister did not mention Article 50.
Order. People talk about respect in this House, but there's a Minister of the Crown shouting at the Right Honourable Member for Normanton. I say in the kindest way, he's normally a very genial fellow. Stop it. You're capable of much better than that. Yvette Cooper.
Given the scale of the challenge, with the clock now really ticking down, the Prime Minister did not mention what will happen to Article 50. Mr Speaker, can you advise the House on what we might be able to do to urge the Prime Minister, for the sake of businesses and jobs and people across the country, to seek an immediate extension of Article 50 now, so that this can be sorted out?
Well, the answer is, in the first instance, these are matters that can be aired in debate tomorrow. I don't think it's right for me tonight to give a ruling on what the Right Honourable Lady or others should or shouldn't do. She will be aware of the presentation of bill that took place in the name of another member who I believe also has views on these matters. These will be, I'm sure, discussed in the days ahead, not merely in private meetings, but I feel certain on the floor of the House. And of one thing I am sure, that which members wish to debate and which they determine shall be subject to a vote will be debated and voted upon. That seems to me so blindingly obvious that no sensible person would disagree with the proposition. If MPs want to debate a matter and to vote on it, that opportunity will, I'm sure, unfold in the period ahead. I think if there are no further points of order, and I don't think we need any, it is right that we hear the supplementary business statement by the Leader of the House.
I'm extraordinarily grateful, Mr Speaker. With permission...
Be honest. I don't really mind whether she's grateful or not, but she's got the chance. The Leader of the House.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr Speaker. With permission, I should like to make a short business statement regarding the business for tomorrow and the remainder of this week. Wednesday, the 16th of January, the House will be asked to consider a motion of no confidence in Her Majesty's Government under Section 2(4) of the Fixed Term Parliaments Act of 2011 in the name of the Leader of the Opposition. Thursday, the 17th of January, debate on a motion on mental health first aid in the workplace, followed by general debate on children's social care in England. The subjects for these debates were determined by the Backbench Business Committee. I shall make a further business statement in the usual way on Thursday. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Thank you. The Shadow Leader of the House, I remind the House that the supplementary business statement is subject to questioning, but its terms are comparatively narrow, and I implore members to recognise the implication and spirit of that fact. The Shadow Leader, Valerie Vaz.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I thank the Leader of the House for the statement and say that the opposition concur with it in the circumstances of the vote. We agree with the debate tomorrow.
Thank you. Yes, Mr Pete Wishart.
Could just wonder, Mr Speaker, whether you could find any way to confirm that the whole day's business tomorrow will be given to the vote of no confidence. According to the legislation that's set out in the Fixed Term Parliament Act, there's only a requirement for an hour and a half. I'm looking to the Leader of the House just to confirm that the whole day will be available. The Chief Whip is shaking his head, so I am sufficiently persuaded that that's going to be the case. So he's nodding his head, rather, so I'm satisfied that that is the case, and the Leader of the House is just about to confirm that.
Yes, subject to the agreement of the House.
It would be useful to know the timings. I mean, ordinarily, the Chair is approached about these matters, which is the sensible way to deal with it, but we do need to know what the timing is, and I hope the Right Honourable Lady will either be able to advise now or to confer with colleagues later in the evening, so that there is clarity on that matter. And then we'll be all very satisfied. The Leader.
Mr Speaker, I can confirm that your office has the proposal for a business motion tomorrow that proposes that the debate takes place for the whole day until 7 p.m.
Grateful, thank you. Point of order, thank you very much indeed. Supplementary business motion, Wes Streeting.
Mr Speaker, I wasn't sure if we were taking questions on the business statement or points of order, but given the scale of the defeat, the government must surely have seen the inevitable coming. The issues for debate on Thursday are important, but every day wasted is another day closer to exit, particularly without a deal. Are we really debating two motions with no consequence on Thursday, rather than deciding how we're going to move forward on a crucial issue facing our country?
The leader can add to what she said by way of the supplementary business statement if she likes. That seemed to me, if the honourable gentleman would forgive me saying so, a kind of curious hybrid between an attempted point of order on the one hand and a question on the supplementary business motion on the other. And I'm not sure if he had to plump for one or the other, which it would be. But what I would say to the honourable gentleman is that these matters can be aired in debate tomorrow, in the business question on Thursday, and in subsequent days. So I completely understand that the honourable gentleman is seized of the importance of early progress, but that opportunity will unfold in days to come, and I think I can predict with confidence that he'll be in his place, ready to leap to his feet to share his point of view with the House. Yes, is it really going to be necessary? Yeah, Simon Hall.
Mr. Speaker, could you confirm that the timetable set out by my right honourable friend, the Leader of the House, perfectly accords with the amended programme motion which the House voted upon last week, which I would guess that the honourable gentleman voted in favour of, which the Prime Minister would have 3 sitting days.
It wouldn't have been agreed if that weren't the case. I don't think it should be unkind to the honourable gentleman, but he's frankly not adding anything by that point of order, although I'm sure he perfectly well intended to do so, but no additional public service has been provided. If there are further questions to the Leader, I'm sure she'll be happy to take them within the confines of the supplementary business motion, but if not, I suggest to the House that we proceed to subsequent motions, namely, if memory serves me correctly, motion number 3 on energy conservation, the whip to move.
I'd like to move.
Oh, well, I'm sure the House wants to hear about the energy conservation motion. The question is as on the order paper. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. The division is deferred until tomorrow. Motion number 4 on exiting the European Union, brackets nuclear safeguards, close brackets, the whip to move, thank you. The question is as on the order paper in respect of motion 4. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Motion number 5 entitled Rating and Valuation.
I beg to move.
The question is as on the order paper. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Motion number 6, colleagues, on UK participation in the EU Agency for Criminal Justice Cooperation, brackets Eurojust, close brackets, post-adoption opt-in decision. The whip to move. Thank you. The question is as on the order paper. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. Oh, the division is deferred until tomorrow. Thank you, colleagues. We come now to the adjournment, the whip to move.
I beg to move this House to now adjourn.
Thank you. The question is that this House do now adjourn. Mr. Kevin Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this historic night, I'm sorry that members are leaving, would not be listening to the problems that my constituency are facing at Chess Street railway station. But I'm pleased, Mr. Speaker, that I've secured this debate to